Welcome everybody to the January 13th, 2014 Education Committee meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak to an agenda item only. So anyone in the public who would like to speak to an agenda item only. Okay, then we're going to move on. And the first thing we're going to do is to vote on a resolution in opposition to Senate Bill 1085 on charter school reform. We spoke about this in the legislative meeting, which the date is escaping me at the moment of when that meeting was. It was recently, about a week ago. Thank you. Although it's unusual for this board to do a resolution on a specific piece of legislation, we decided that we were concerned enough about the potential negative implications for the district that we wanted to do that. I'm going to read the resolution shortly, but if people are interested in learning more about this, the Keystone State Education Coalition website has information, and we would encourage people to write to your representatives, although our local representatives are also, I haven't spoken to everyone, but those I've spoken to are opposed to the bill. So the resolution reads as follows. The Board of School Directors of Lower Merion School District stands in opposition to the passage of Pennsylvania Senate Bill 1085 and urges school boards from across the Commonwealth to inform members of the Senate of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania about the serious flaws in this proposed legislation and the potentially negative impact on local public schools. Whereas the members of the Board of School Directors of the Lower Merion School District take most seriously their obligations to the current and future students of this community, and whereas the members of the Board of School Directors of the Lower Merion School District take most seriously their obligation to the taxpayers of the community, and whereas the members of the Board of School Directors of the Lower Merion School District understand the potential negative impact of the passage of Senate Bill 1085, and whereas Senate Bill 1085 would allow for the formation of charter schools in this community that are not authorized by the Board of School Directors, and whereas Senate Bill 1085 gives the authority to authorize charter schools to the boards of colleges and universities, which are comprised of individuals who are not elected to office by this community and may not reside in this district, and whereas the proposed legislation would create new and substantial financial obligations for local school districts, and whereas Senate Bill 1085 would remove the authority of local school boards to manage the growth and grade configuration of charter schools that have been authorized, thereby creating significant obstacles for effective student enrollment planning and staffing on the part of local school districts. And whereas Senate Bill 1085 would extend the authorization period for charter schools from 5 to 10 years, when all evidence suggests the need for greater oversight on the part of local school districts. And whereas Senate Bill 1085 does not adequately address the need to immediately change the funding formula for cyber charter schools, when the Pennsylvania Department of Education has sound evidence that the cost of operating cyber charter schools is considerably less than the cost of operating so-called brick and mortar charter schools. And whereas Senate Bill 1085 fails to identify a process of accountability and reconciliation as it purports to limit fund balances of charter schools and institute a practice of returning excess funds to school districts, now therefore be it resolved that for the issues identified above, the Board of School Directors stands in opposition to the passage of Senate Bill 1085 and calls on members of the House and Senate to return debate to the Education Committee for the development of more responsible legislation that does not transfer authority for taxpayer dollars to unelected individuals on boards of trustees of colleges and universities who do not operate subject to the sunshine laws and accountability standards of locally elected school boards. So that is the resolution. Before we vote, is there anyone who'd like to ask a question or comment? Okay, well, with that, do I have a motion? Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Then the motion passes unanimously. So again, since that was a very wordy resolution, I think I'd like to just say that, our concern is that this really does take away from the authority of locally elected school boards, that there are financial implications, negative financial implications we're concerned about, and that there are also obstacles for planning effectively. And so we have decided to oppose it, and we are calling on other school boards to do so as well. So, thank you.
Melissa, is there the plan to email that out to our elected representatives or
Yes,
the entire legislature, frankly?
Well, we've already called our local legislators and have informed them, but we will send the formal resolution out. We wanted to make sure we had, we're voting on it, and we will do that. And Doug Young has informed the press, and there's an article in the Mainline Times already, I noticed earlier this evening, so we will be doing that as well.
And any resident of the district can write to any of those elected officials, state representatives or state senators about the bill.
Absolutely. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. McGinley.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have just two items on our formal agenda this evening. One is the comprehensive planning process. We formerly known as, and we may actually inadvertently use both terms, strategic planning and comprehensive planning as we discuss it. The school district is required by the state to engage in a process of comprehensive planning, and Dr. Marseille is chairing that effort for us, and he's going to share with the board and with the community our approach to this obligation that we see as an opportunity to really paint a picture of where we want to be several years out, and to discuss some of the broader and deeper questions about where we're heading as a school district. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Marseille, and his presentation after your questions and answers will be followed by a short presentation from Dr. Doria on extended day supports that we plan to provide to kindergarten students this spring. Some kindergarten students this spring.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley. If you recall, I gave a really brief presentation on November 11th to the board and to the public around some highlights of this new comprehensive model that the state of Pennsylvania has adopted and that we're going to move forward with in terms of the compliant aspect of comprehensive planning process, which the language has changed to some extent from strategic planning to comprehensive planning. So tonight I want to take you briefly through some things we've learned through the process. On November 11th, I talked to you a little bit about an opportunity that presented itself for myself and several of my colleagues to attend a 3-day leadership seminar at Harvard Graduate School of Education that began to have us reflect upon our work, engage in a framework around strategic thinking, and I wanted to share some of that with you. I also wanted to give you a little bit of information or background information on some of the logistics that are required of the comprehensive plan, and review briefly a timeline that we've put together of activities and meetings that will take place for the next 7 to 8 plus months. So I started with this picture because when I started in the district in 2007, I was assistant principal at Lower Marion High School, and Sean Hughes, who at the time was assistant principal, but now is the principal, had this book, the first 300, in his office. And I began to look through that book, and that book really captures 300 years of Lower Merion, which really impressed me because it was put together by historians, educators, artists, writers, that painted a really vivid picture of Lower Merion and its landscape, and talked about the evolution of the district. And if you see, some of those pictures represent some of our schools, from the Ardmore School, the Ashland Elementary, the Ballard Elementary, and it took us through, for me, is this idea about tradition, this idea about legacy, which is deep to my heart, and thinking about our next evolution as a district. And when I read the history of Lower Merion, I think about 1835 and the tradition of excellence that we have in this district. And what has happened time and time is board members and communities have gotten together, previous generations, to have a conversation about creating a bold vision for students and the community. Things look very different now than they did before. Generation past had tremendous challenges as we face today. But the similarity we shared was a community and board who wanted to go beyond those challenges and do what is in the best interest of students, with the unwavering belief that students are our reason for being. And though this mission statement was not around 130 some odd years ago, I'd have to say that previous generations has espoused the same belief, the notion that creativity, critical thinking, citizenship, knowledge, innovation, diversity has been the hallmark of our existence. And when the world has said no to so many things, Lower Merion time and time again has stood the test of time and held to its values and has said yes when decisions were difficult, but they did that in the best interest of students. And there are many moments of that in history, but one that is fresh in your mind is the moment of integration on September 12th, when the community in 1963 decided that, when everybody else was saying this is not the way to go, decided to close Ardmore schools and integrate schools. And throughout this time, and long before that, I have to believe that they were engaged in similar conversation. And the conversation that we're going to be engaged in for the next 7+ months is really a conversation that asks us to be bold. It's going to ask us to be innovative, while at the same time staying true to our values. So these questions in terms of where does Lower Merion School District see itself 10 years from now? And what are ways in which we leverage our passion, our skills, our expertise to prepare students for what we know are challenges moving forward in an educational landscape that continues to shift, and some of those challenges that are unforeseen. And I thought about that term 1835 and think that 10 years from now, we're going to celebrate our 190th anniversary. 10 years after that, our bicentennial. And call me nostalgic, but I think that I'm extremely excited to be part of a community that continues to push the envelope, but at the same time, making sure that that priority rests on doing what's best for students. And I think that this conversation around comprehensive planning, no matter what form it takes from the state level, is what we have been doing and will continue will continue to do. So on December 2nd, myself and two central office administrators spent 3 days at, what I like to call a think tank, though it wasn't that, at Harvard. And part of those 3 days, which was really a tremendous experience, was helping helping the three of us, and information we've gotten, we shared with others, and what we continue to share is this idea around strategic thinking. It pushed us for 3 days to think about these three particular questions. Why are we doing it? What are we doing? And how are we doing that? And these conversations are conversations that are going to drive our work as we think about Lower Merion and how to better prepare our students and our faculty. And some of that information I put in, that was depicted by some of the key items we talked about. And a lot of this was this idea that you need to go deeper than just the symptoms, this root cause analysis. When you're doing serious reflection, oftentimes in strategic planning, you often get to the topical aspect, but really don't get down to the root causes. And we spent 3 days kind of unpacking what were some of those symptoms that made us successful, some of those symptoms that we wanted to improve on, but really what were the root causes. Had long conversations around mission and vision. We did activities that pushed us to think about what were our strengths as a community, as a district, and what was evidence of that. What were some threats and opportunities that are presented to us, whether they're here or future threats and opportunities. So it was really enlightening to spend those 3 days in deep, serious reflection about what the work looks like, and how to move forward. And part of that was understanding that there's a misconception between the terminology and the definition of strategic planning and strategy. And we try to unpack that, because oftentimes institutions define strategic planning or strategy as a list of things. And that's not what we took away from our 3 days. And part of the conversation we had about strategy is the idea that you really start from the inside out. When you look at successful organizations, regardless of what their focus area in, regardless the size, successful organizations and successful leaders think about the why. Everyone knows the what of the work. Some people know the how. Very few can articulate the why. And it gave us an opportunity to think about and engage in collaborative conversation about why do we do what we do as a district, and how do we motivate people moving forward in the next phase. We spent time talking about what are habits of strategic thinkers. And one of the things that stick out for me, this idea around anticipating. And it's really not about anticipating for a new initiative. It's not trying to anticipate a new trend. It's about thinking, how do we leverage ourselves as a community to prepare our students for those particular challenges. So we want to embody those type of thinking model as we move forward in our strategic or comprehensive planning process. And we walked away, I felt, with a much clearer understanding about what strategy is and is not. And it indeed is a few key areas supported through data and beliefs that focus on the instructional core. Students, teachers, and the curriculum. And that should be the primary focus of any meaningful, comprehensive plan. So as we embark in this new journey, I wanted to share with you a video that speaks to that vision. But what they also told us, and what we experience, that oftentimes strategic planning becomes a list of things to do, right? It becomes overwhelming. It becomes too grand and doesn't have clear focus or clarity. And there's going to have to be some really courageous conversations about next steps in terms of that process. It does not mean that work is not happening. It does not mean you don't believe the importance of some of the work. It means that not everything goes into your strategic planning process. It doesn't mean you're not doing the work. So as we move into the next phase, I wanted to show a little video that is called The Redesign of Schools. And it's a 4-minute clip that, whether you agree with the direction of what the narrative talks about, the next phase of evolution for education, it's really an opportunity just to spark inquiry about what education may look like and how do we prepare for that.
Our world is changing. It's becoming smaller, faster, more connected and more competitive. We now can instantly communicate with anyone, anywhere, and access all of human knowledge from a device that fits in the palm of our hand. Nearly everyone else on the planet can do the same thing. Our children will truly compete and collaborate with peers across the globe. Few aspects of our current system genuinely prepare students for the world of today, much less the uncertain world of tomorrow. We must fundamentally redesign the educational experience. True excellence is buried inside every one of our students, but our factory model of education tends to squelch, not enhance, individual creativity and ingenuity. Students are moved through the assembly line of grade levels and are all fitted with predetermined knowledge. This mechanized, standardized educational system drains the vitality and creative force of teachers and administrators as well. We need a new design, yes! One that customizes learning and seeks to ignite the spark in each student. We can simultaneously pursue standards-based learning and individualize the curriculum, connecting learning to our students' passions and ensuring excellence and equity for all. How do we create such a school? First, we will design a continuous progress system where students move at their own pace, addressing skills and topics as soon as each student is ready. Learning activities will be tailored to meet unique needs and engage students in authentic experiences. Second, access to powerful 24/7 learning devices will help students customize their own learning and provide instant access to unlimited content. Students will also connect to others anywhere in the world, creating learning networks where they can collaborate with peers, mentors, and experts outside the classroom. Finally, a great learning experience will continue to place students alongside inspiring, well-trained professional teachers. Technology will allow teachers much more time to work individually with students, providing far more personalized interactions. It is time to think anew, to design anew. We must challenge our preconceived notions of schooling that limit the possibilities and use our diversity of talents, ideas, and passions to create a system where uniqueness is championed, strengths are multiplied, and joy is a regular part of learning. We will set a new course for education, one that will produce the greatest thinkers, dreamers, designers, leaders, and entrepreneurs the world has ever known.
So part of that was really to help to engage in a conversation. Whether we believe or not we need a new design, whether you believe in schools as a factory model, really wasn't the point of that little clip. Whether you think schools are standardized or not, the idea is to think about where are we as an institution and what are we doing well and how do we leverage that and move forward. What is unmistakably true is that technology has dramatically shifted the way in which where knowledge is formed. And the pictures I showed you earlier, the idea of the schoolhouse where knowledge resided in that building no longer exists. We fundamentally believe that the high school experience, that culminating experience, will look vastly different 10 years from now. And will look even much different 10 years after that. And part of the conversations we're going to have as a community is to think about what are those changes and how do we prepare for that system. Not a cry to redesign the system, but an opportunity to reflect on who we are and how do we maintain our values and traditions. Think boldly about the future of our students and in our community. So some background information that I shared with you previously that speaks to the state's requirements with this new comprehensive model. The state's requiring minimally that you put together a 3-year plan. We believe as a district that it is to our advantage in terms of being strategic to put a much more comprehensive long-term plan together. And our work would be designed to put together a 5-year comprehensive plan. And part of the state requirements is under each of those headings to fill out information that speaks to the district's history, its values, description of its educational community, and members of its district planning team. Further in the body of that comprehensive plan are some really core foundations that we're going to be required to engage in conversation with and input into the system to create that. We have a special education plan that is a big part. All these are big parts of our work. We have a professional education plan that needs to be devised as we think about what does that mean to our overall goals over the next 5 years. So I wanted to share with you what some of the core foundations will be. Now, the state requires that part of the comprehensive process is to bring together a steering committee. And what you're seeing on here is the minimum number of participants that the state says should participate in this process. This does not indicate the number of individuals that we will bring into the conversation. It's much more extensive than that. The state requires a minimum of 16 individuals participate as part of a larger steering committee that will shepherd this work to some extent and help think about the comprehensive plan. In 2009, we had over 50 participants participate in the planning process, and we anticipate the same number. But unlike the other, the last model, and we attempt to do a little better than we did from previous years, is that we will engage and invite more parents than we did the last session, even though we had a large number of parents who attended that the initial phase of that planning in late January and I think early February of 2009. So I wanted to identify, and the next several slides will break down some other dates for you, but I wanted to identify some really key dates that play a pivotal role in our work moving forward. So this steering committee, with the minimum number in addition to 40 some odd other individuals that will be invited to participate in this conversation, will take place on May 5th and May 15th, and we decided to put those dates up as early as possible to give the community much time to think about their participation and their schedule. We have student surveys and board surveys and community surveys that we are currently working on as part of a leadership team that we have put together and made up of central office administrators and supervisors upon our return from Harvard, that has met 4 or 5 times since December in trying to put a framework around this work, who have been really instrumental in helping shape some of these dates. You see that we have a special education plan and the entire comprehensive plan due dates that help shape our conversation. So what we tried to do is map backwards from those particular dates as best as we can. So here you will see an overview of some of our meetings that have taken place from November 11th through January 9th, and future meetings coming up. You notice that the bottom we have a special education plan on display, which I believe is a new requirement. If I see Ms. Chavez shaking her head, so she's giving me the nod of approval. That the state requires that not only the special education plan, but the comprehensive plan as well, that is due months after that, is put on display for the public to view and to get feedback on as well. So working backwards was that March 24th date that we identified. We talked about, and we've been in conversation, and Doug Young and I were extremely excited when we got to Harvard, during Harvard, and we were thinking about this idea about leveraging social media very differently than we had in 2009 to bring in a much larger pool of participants. And what the leadership team is going to do, that I mentioned to you earlier, is design a series of questions and surveys, K through 12 and for parents or guardians, that help us think more critically about our work. We're going to design 5 to 7 key questions that gets at the heart of, where do you see Lower Merion School District? What are your hopes and dreams? What opportunities that presents itself? What could we be doing better to help us bring all that information together and develop a much more diversified, comprehensive planning process. Here I show the dates again where we're going to invite for 3 sessions. There will be numerous other opportunities to engage in conversation throughout the school year. So HSA parents, we're going to engage in conversations in their meetings, the ISC, CIPD, CSE, all those organizations, we're going to try to push into their meetings by our leadership team, and begin to give them the opportunity to think more critically about our work and give us feedback on the work of the district. So I'm extremely excited to be part of this process again. I'm in a very different role than I was in 2009. I was excited about it in 2009, and even more excited in 2014 as I work with you, the board, and the administrators and teachers and parents and community members to shape the vision of the district. So at this time, if there's any questions about the process, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
First of all, I just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Massey, for that presentation. And I think it's important that people realize that the board has asked Dr. McGinley and the rest of the administration to engage in a very serious and comprehensive, now we're calling it the comprehensive plan, and I'm
Yes.
going to keep calling it strategic plan as well, and that we really wanted to think through ways to be as inclusive as possible, to reach as broad a group as possible. And this is clearly an excellent start to that, although I think this will be a long process of kind of figuring out the details as we go forward. Before I open up for questions, I just want to ask, I'm assuming this will go on the website, correct?
Yes, it will.
So I would just ask that, that the headings be clear, that these components and the steering committee and stuff are the minimum required by the state and not what we intend to do, because I think it'll be,
Yes, I will.
we want to move beyond this minimum, so I just want to make sure that's
I
clear.
will clarify that that slide for those who aren't able to participate through the audio
Right.
aspect of it.
Yes, because I think many people, yeah. So before, are there any questions or comments that people would like to make? Go ahead, Robin.
Thank you to Dr. Marseille and our administrative team. I'm interested in hearing you speak about what the leadership team sees in terms of what they're going to carry over from the last strategic plan, which was comprehensive and which did engage stakeholders. So that's part one of the question. The second piece is you talked about parent engagement and bringing more parents in. I'm interested in also hearing about how we're going to engage students, and from elementary, middle, high school, but also our students who are 1 year out, 3 years, 5 years. What does that look like as we think about some of these creative and innovative approaches to what high school will in fact look like in 10 years?
Sure. So what will we carry over? As you know, we had a really bold strategic plan, and we are in the process right now as a leadership team reflecting on the last 5 years and starting to think about the way in which much of our thinking that we learned from Harvard was there's a sense of loss when you put closure to certain things, and that districts must make decisions around, for a lack of a better term, and I can't think of a better term, what do you put to bed? Where can you say that you have been successful, and this moves from a strategic plan to what now we're coining as operationalized. It becomes part of your daily work. And what we're going to be doing next week, and what we have been doing, is looking back at that strategic plan, identifying the evidence of that work, and making recommendations for how we want to move forward with that. Is that going to be part of a very large goal item in the next 5 years? Or do we believe as a district we've made significant progress in that area, and now it's just part of our daily work? And so I'm looking forward to that. In addition to that, this reflection part of the work is not solely with the leadership team. We have principals who will be engaged in conversation with their leadership teams at their buildings, looking at the strategic plan, asking the same questions. What was successful? What worked? what is now operationalized in terms of that, and what are the big takeaways. Because one of the slides talked about strategic thinking is about clear, focused ideas that are connected to each other. And we need to be strategic in terms of what we're pulling out and adding to the plan. So that work is currently in progress, and we hope to share some of that information with you moving forward. And we anticipate, actually, there's a date for that where we're going to do that. The last part, which is the most exciting part, is for me, and I talked a little bit about that earlier, about the engagement of students. All right, and oftentimes you hear from students, did anyone talk to us before adults decided that this was the best thing, right? And we're like, yeah, we spoke to a couple of you. We get it, right? We know best. And so what's exciting for me is that we're creating a way of communicating with students K through 12, and meet them where they're at in terms of understanding, to develop questions for them that give an opportunity to participate in the process. So when we talk about elementary students, the leadership team is going to identify what are some questions that we can facilitate to elementary students to get them thinking about, what do you like about your school? What would you change, right? Conversations about more recess, I'm sure, would come up. We'll add that. Not sure we'll move forward with that plan, but I think that for me, giving students a much larger voice in the conversation, both through surveys and through focus groups, because we are going to have key focus groups conversations as well when that's appropriate to have it with those particular students. So we're extremely excited that the communication plan that Doug Young in his office is helping us to communicate that is extremely exciting, and parents as well. What we committed to is that we're not going to rely on people coming to us. We want to go to the community. So wherever there are opportunities where the community gets together, part of the leadership team's responsibility is to go and facilitate and to schedule meetings where we give people an opportunity to get into focus groups and talk about their hopes, their dreams for the district and ideas for moving forward.
So I just want to add one thing. The last strategic plan is a really good plan and a good model. I do think that there are some times when information or issues of concern were raised in the larger group that needed to be addressed, but the corrective action that needed to take place wasn't necessarily strategic. Some things pointed to a more efficient, more management-centered kind of course correction. And so what I want to try to make sure that we do this time is make sure that the big goals are goals that we need a strategy to get to. Okay. And I don't want it to be layered on with so many things that are things that common sense might tell you to do, and we should do them, and we better do them, but they don't necessarily need to make it into the plan. So, and the other thing I would say is, because we really want to make sure that this is an open process, is we can't today guarantee anything about the old plan that's in the new plan. Sure. Until people have a chance to digest what we've done, look at the data, and look at the new input that we have today. So, I mean, I very much hope that there's some major elements of the old plan that carry forward, but if we're being true to the process, we need to allow that to emerge.
That's great, thank you.
Are there other questions?
I just wanted to make one comment. I also wanted to echo the just kudos for leveraging a regulatory requirement into an opportunity for broad community engagement. I think we've just ended a cycle where the community was really reactive to some decisions, and the more that we can position this as the community can actually proactively provide input that will actually translate into strategic guidance for the administration and the board, that could be a way to get folks to the table beyond maybe those who are likely to come to the table. And I just think this is a good moment to have that broad community conversation about values and priorities. But my question is, I wonder if you or anyone else could speak briefly about how the strategic plan actually does get used as a decision-making tool as in your operations, because if you, either now or you can clarify that in your communications moving forward, it might get the community extra interested in making sure their input gets heard. So I don't know if you wanted to, if you have an instructive example that you can talk about now, or it's just a suggestion to think about.
All right, we'll think about that. Now, are you, your question in terms of operationalize, give me a little bit more in terms of,
Well-
I'm thinking operations, I'm thinking infrastructure. That's not what you're saying in terms
No,
of
just-
operationalize.
I can think of one example from the
Sure.
strategic plan. We have a goal about increasing holistic supports for students. And we've used that umbrella to investigate a lot of different avenues, to work with parent groups and parent organizations to look at how kids socialize. Under that umbrella about what's that whole experience like, the whole course of the day, the whole course of the year for students, and for students who may walk in the door, do well start to finish, K to 12, and for kids who may hit some obstacles along the way, and for kids of all different backgrounds and language backgrounds. So we've used that umbrella to investigate a lot of different issues, and under that holistic supports umbrella, we've changed roles of counselors and other professionals. We've brought in Olveus and other anti-bullying programs, and all of those things. We didn't know what Olveus was when we wrote the plan, but it came in under that umbrella of we need to be more mindful of the experience of the whole child in this school setting. So I think that's a place where the plan was a guidepost, and everyone, we made public that was a concern of ours, and a lot of our faculty, staff, and parents have raised that issue. I know you're looking at this issue because it's published that we are, and here are some resources. So it gives us a way to attract new input and new information, and to find new opportunities. The other thing that we've done routinely is we've reported to the board and to the public about the strategic plan. Where do we see ourselves this year? Where do we see ourselves next year? And so that's been something that we've started off the year with, to talk about where do we see ourselves right now, as also a way to monitor what's going on and to keep it present for the administrators and for the staff in the schools.
Okay, that's great. I mean, at the end of the day, there's time and resource decisions to be made, so the strategic plan is a way to help, I guess, prioritize those for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcel.
Are there other questions or comments right now? No? Okay. Again, thank you very much for the
Thank you very much.
presentation.
Well, we'll be talking about this a lot. There's more to come.
Next, we have a report from Dr. Doria, and this is about an opportunity that has been designed to assist students in kindergarten who need a boost before the year concludes and before they move into first grade. And the idea of looking at extended time for kindergarten students really came out of a subcommittee last year of the CARE Committee, where they talked about extended time in a variety of ways, but then focused in on what could happen for kindergarten students in order to provide more opportunities to learn in the course of the year. And so there was work done on this by Dr. Lewin and Deb Lewicki last spring, and the principals. And there was more work that took place over the summer, thinking about what do we know about the research, about student learning at this age and literacy development at this age. And over time, this plan was brought forward, and we shared the plan with the curriculum committee last week, and the curriculum committee asked that we share it with the full committee, and also to let the public know about this pilot that we are going to run later in the school year. So now that you're all set up, I'll stop talking.
Thank you so
and
much.
Dr. Doria.
Yes. So good evening. Good evening. Thrilled to be here. So some of you have walked through this with me earlier in the week, but happy to do so again. Asked to condense it a little bit. But we, as Dr. McGinley shared, the baton was passed from Dr. Lewin and Deb Lebowicki, right, who've done a phenomenal job setting this up. And then we've worked with the principals and the elementary education team, reading specialists, and teachers to really have conversation about framing the work and being very intentional in supporting the students. And so looking at the importance of it, someone might say, well, what's the purpose of this? And why is this why do we have this opportunity for our students? And what we found is that students in kindergarten, oftentimes there's a group of students who need a little additional push at the second half of the year, who have done a steady job of learning, but we're not quite prepared to be successful in first grade. And we've talked to teachers, and we've looked at data, and we've realized that that often happens in the second half of the year, and we say we need to gather some additional supports to provide the students some intervention to be successful to carry them through to first grade. And again, this is an opportunity for a select group of students. So we don't want to say that it's an extended day for kindergarten, but it's an extended day program or an opportunity for a select group of students. And we're looking at this as a pilot program, and we're looking at 6 to 8 students at each school who would have the highest need to wrap our arms around them and provide them this 12-week program, some intervention and supports. And thinking about how are we going to identify these students. So these are students currently in the month of January and through the very beginning days of February, we're providing the assessments to the students, not because of this program, it's just part of our calendar year. So the kindergarten students starting this week will be, and all the way to the beginning of February, will be receiving their DIBELS assessments, their reading records, and their benchmarks for math and for reading. And then using those, we're going to rank the scores and really identify the 6 to 8 students in each school that we can support and prepare for first grade. And in the experience, you're thinking about what are the components, or what does this program look like, or what's the curriculum that we're going to be using. So in language arts, we use leveled literacy instruction currently, and the level is orange for kindergarten, so we're going to continue with that in a small group setting. And we're looking at math, the Dreambox component from the iPad application, as well as additional small group supports in the kindergarten curriculum, and a speech and language support for at least 1 hour a week, really looking at the expressive language and the receptive language and the social skills for those students. And we met with the literacy specialist and the curriculum staff here at the elementary level to kind of come up with an example of a typical day. And this is really just an example, because until we have the student data to really see what the students need, we can't craft that actual day. But we're going to looking at a class meeting and your shared reading and your read alouds, and then the LLI, small group reading support, and the Dreambox, the small group math. And then opportunities to participate in other content-related activities. But we want to really make sure that we highlight that these are kindergarten students, so we want to focus on appropriate breaks and play and movement and transitions and factor that in as we plan for the students, so it meets the needs of all the learners. And we're looking at this experience to be a 12-week program for a couple of reasons. I just want to share that out. To identify the students early in the year would do a disservice to the children, because we want to provide them with the instruction that we have in kindergarten, and then see at the second half of the year, are there some students who aren't not quite ready, because they come to kindergarten with different experiences. So we don't want to identify a student in September. We want to see how they do for that first half of the year, and then have our assessments in January, and then take a look to see what are the students that need additional supports. And additionally, looking at the 12 weeks, the research from the LLI program shares that 12 to 14 weeks of this program can get students on grade level. So if we're catching them at kindergarten and we're saying they're a little bit off, we want to provide those additional supports so that they can be successful successful at that starting gate in first grade. So we're not starting off in first grade behind the 8 ball. And looking at the session, so it's anticipated that the sessions would be in the afternoon, because we do have more morning kindergarten, so if you're looking at the numbers of students, but it's a pilot program. So a question may be, if there's a student in the alternate side. So if a school's having the extended program in the afternoon, what if there's a student in the morning that needs those additional supports? And we had some conversation at the curriculum committee of the board to say, what could we, move students around? But looking at 12 weeks in a kindergarten experience, kindergarten is like a home. They build the friendships and the relationships. So looking at placing a student in another classroom for a 12-week period seems a little scary to the student, but what we have identified is that once we do this month of assessments, if there is a student or two at an alternate AM or PM that has that same level of need, then we have to provide additional supports for them during that school day. And looking at the staffing, we do have an additional cost of a part-time teacher, and we're looking at the 12 weeks of that additional teacher for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. But the additional supports that we're going to use for the speech support, the literacy support, and the math support are resources we already have available at each school site. And that's the overview. I was asked to give a little summary, not the full presentation, of the extended day kindergarten opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dory. We really appreciate you going through this again. And I have to say that I think this is very exciting, and I think this is a good example, actually, of our strategic plan really focusing on ensuring that we were supporting all children, and we've been doing that and trying to do that in a lot of different ways. And I think that Dr. McGinley has been offering a lot of innovations in this area. So we really appreciate that. We're excited by that. Are there any questions or comments? Go ahead, Robin.
Thank you, Dr. Dory, and again, appreciate you presenting this to the full board and the community. I'm interested in hearing about a program evaluation. What makes a program successful? So that's one piece. And then also the kinds of supports available for the select group of students through the summer and as they enter first grade. What kinds of conversations will we have with teachers, with parents, to really ensure that students are successful as they enter that first grade year?
Absolutely. So the assessment or the successfulness or identifying that of the program will be the current assessments that we use. So we don't want to give students more assessments. We hear that testing. So the students receive the running records. So we'll do that again, and that really identifies a student's reading level. So that's really attached to the LLI, because the intention is to make sure that we have all students on a B. Am I correct, Deb, on that? Yeah, so on that B level. So many of the students are on the A or kind of a pre-A, so we want to make sure that they're on the B. And then with DIBELS, we're going to actually have progress monitoring throughout, because any student who does not hit benchmark on DIBELS this month, regardless of this extended day opportunity, would be progress monitored in DIBELS every several weeks regularly. So we're going to follow that data as well, and then the benchmarks that come at the end of the year for the assessments.
So, and we're working on a connection for students who receive these supports who move into the SPIES program in the summer as well.
Right, and that's right. The second piece of that is that transition into the summer. So there's two components that we've talked about as a team. So one is providing those opportunities for learning that we can share to take home, and we've talked about as a group. And then the second is that bridge or that transition right into the SPIES program for the summer program.
Just a follow-up, Dr. Dory. So parents don't have to have their children do the extended day. So how are we encouraging parents to ensure that our students of the most need are actually participating?
Great point as well. So it's actually conversations that the principals are having with the parents once we identify these, and really explaining the importance and the great opportunity for that. But again, it's a parent choice to be, to decide to participate in that program. So we're going to encourage them through the conversations with the principals.
But the choice exists only for the parents that the
Correct.
principal contacts and invites in.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
so
a
we're-
very small program.
Very small program. We're really ranking the students parallel to how they do for reading recovery. So we're kind of looking at those components of all the pieces, ranking the students, and then identifying those students to invite the 6 to 8 of the greatest need at each school.
Thanks. Dr. McGinley, we've talked about this as a pilot program. Can you explain what that means? And there's no plan in place to extend this beyond sort of a 12-week support type thing, right?
Our original design went beyond 12 weeks, but it was 3 days a week. And in consultation with the principals and the kindergarten teachers and our supervisors, the program became consolidated into 12 weeks, but a 5-day-a-week program. There are certain things that we won't do in any revision of this program. One is that we won't, as Dr. Dory said, we won't start too early. We really recognize that by parent choice or by circumstance, kids have all different kinds of experiences prior to coming to kindergarten, and we want to use the entire first semester for kids to get acclimated to school and adjust to the program, hopefully move into academic learning mode, but we want to give them a chance to establish a comfort level with school. We're calling it a pilot because, just as the question that Dr. Van Lynch asked, how do we know it's going to have any impact? So if we get to the end of the 12 weeks, even though we know these are research-supported intervention models, and we really just don't see any impact, and we don't see any growth, we need to go back to the drawing board. We're not going to ask the district to commit the same level of funds to do the same thing over again. We know we have a problem with some kids not being ready for first grade, and we know that if they're not ready for first grade, that follows them into second and third and contributes to a whole lot of other issues. So we feel the need to intervene early. This is our approach, and we're calling it a pilot because it's the first time we're doing it in this way. In directing Mr. Orlando with the budget, we asked him to reserve funds and identify funds in the budget so that this could continue. And we are also looking at, well, if we do see some effectiveness, how could it be expanded so that there is at least the same opportunity for morning and afternoon? Because right now, schools are doing it for one or the other wherever they see the greatest need. So we're calling it a pilot for that reason, because it's not an across-the-board opportunity. It's a pilot intervention program.
Can I just clarify one thing that we had talked about in committee, which was that the students who are identified as having need but who are not in the program will continue to receive supports as well.
Okay. Yeah, I have 2 other questions. I guess the first, again, I think Dr. McGinley is probably for you. I am a little concerned, and I'd appreciate it if you would speak to the caseloads of our support staff in the buildings, particularly in the larger buildings where they're already pulled at from many sides, and how you feel this is going to fit into that, and are we going to, do you anticipate we're going to see requests for additional support teachers because of this requirement?
This is the if you build it, they will come kind of scenario. When we had one reading specialist in a school, we had enough work for one reading specialist. When we added 2, when we added the second, we had enough for 2. The best thing that I can say is that we have more kids who are reading on grade level because of the reading program that we have, and while everyone wants any student who is at all behind to receive supports, and there's a real push, a genuine, honest push on the part of teachers to get a student help. We believe that we've given teachers more in-classroom resources to support a broader range of student abilities, and that as we are into several years into the program, that our teachers are better able to keep kids moving along within the reading program. But it's always a sorting out of priorities. As to this year, we had notified the math support teachers and the reading specialists that this was something that we anticipated doing. This is something we were planning to do, and the principals have been aware of it, and so while they've been giving their time wherever they saw the greatest need, or the achievement team directed their attention. We think that this is something that we can do with our existing resources in terms of the reading and math support specialists. The largest school that we have is Gladwin Elementary School, where we have 2 reading specialists and 1 math support teacher. We happen to have at that school fewer kids referred for support than we have at some of our other locations. So in the case of the largest, we see that it's an equitable distribution of support services given the need, not just the raw number of kids. When you get to Penn Valley, we see a large building and greater need, and it is something that, based on school size and capacity, we might come back, but not based on this program would we come back to ask for additional staff.
Okay. And then my last question, I guess, Dr. Dory, is probably more likely for you. You gave us an idea of the, of a typical day and the things that are going to happen. And the research that I've been reading has said that interaction with quality literature and talking about and having conversations with students about that literature is one of the best ways to improve future success or to help support future success in reading. And so my question is twofold. One, can you give me an idea of roughly how many hours you think, or I'm not sure. So how many hours are there in that half a day that will be spent on academics, quote unquote, and not lunch and play? And then the second part of that question would be, you mentioned an hour per week in speech and language, and again, just from the research that I've been reading recently, is that enough?
Right. So for the quality literature, the good piece is that for the shared or the read aloud that happens, it's really, we select that, so we really use that quality literature for that interaction. And the shared piece is really where the teacher is modeling thinking and thinking aloud as they go, so that's that one piece. And then we get right into the LLI piece, which is that small group instruction, and that's where that rigorous conversation comes about the literature that they're reading. So they get it kind of 2 pieces throughout the day. So a shared lesson is usually about, or a shared reading opportunity is usually about 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes when the teacher introduces and thinks aloud. And then that small group setting where you're doing a guided reading piece only takes 20 minutes, sometimes 15. So those are those 2 components for the literacy. And the speech and an hour a day, is that enough? I'm going to say yes, but I can't prove, an hour a week, I'm sorry, but I can't, I don't have anything right here to support that, but it's an hour a week for that small group of 6 to 8 for that expressive language.
And just one quick follow-up. Is there any thought to inviting other families or community members to come into these classrooms and do some of that one-on-one work? I mean, really maximize our outside resources to really kind of model and push and generate that, because the more one-to-one we can get for these students, probably, I'm assuming, to a certain degree, the better. And is there any
That's an
thought about
excellent thought.
that?
We hadn't talked about that, but we do that in kindergarten currently. So when we visit kindergarten classes, we see lots of support from families. So that's a great next step. But we hadn't talked about it, but we surely can.
Go ahead.
Just one last quick question, and this seems like a really carefully and thoughtfully designed pilot, which is neat. And I was just wondering, when will you know how many parents who get this offer will accept it?
And that's a great question too. So we have some preliminary data from the first cycle that was the end of November to look at what might be our 10 students or 12 students, and that, as I said, the assessments are happening now. So we kind of have a timeline with our reading specialists that they're going to give us some information on January 15th, then January 30th, and then February 7th or 8th, so that we're kind of getting that information as we come along. So we'll have everything ranked and ready that first week in February, so that we can then reach out to the parents
Great.
at that time. So we have, some time to really have parents ask questions, review, see if it's something that they want, and then we still have an opportunity that if they choose to decline, we can go down that list and then, contact another parent, still giving them enough time to make that decision.
And that'll be discussed at the committee. I think that'll be interesting to understand, who's accepted and who hasn't and
And
why.
maybe reasons behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to thank you and just reiterate what I said at the curriculum committee meeting, which is that I think this is a wonderful opportunity, having worked with young people of this age who, 1 hour of after-school tutoring a week is not the same as by a volunteer such as myself, is not the same as having a half a day with professionals who are trained to work with kids. And you can see the difference in kindergartners, and I think this will just really be very beneficial, and I thank you.
Excellent.
Questions, comments? Okay, thank you again very much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. At this point, I'm going to move into audience recognition on really any issue, agenda or non-agenda. So if you would like to speak, please come and sign up now. If you could sign up now with Ms. LaPera. Everyone's familiar with it. Please state your name and where you live, and there's a 3-minute limit.
Happy New Year, everybody. Ruth Jenkin, 354 Worcester Road. As you know, for the last 5 years, I've been talking about extended day for at-risk students in the kindergarten level. I have a couple of questions about the program itself. First of all, are they going to be having lunch? Because they're transitioning from morning to afternoon. So I assume that there'll be a lunch activity, which is also part of a learning social environment. If one school has fewer children available for this program, can we take more from another school? Would there be more space so that we're still getting that average? So let's say theoretically Gladwin has only 3 students, but Penn Valley has 9. Can we equalize the number, or does it have to be in the same building?
I'm writing down your questions. Can you just give us would you mind just giving us your questions?
Okay, you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also concerned with active experience in kindergarten, not just book learning. Are they going to be seeing things, going places, doing things, experiencing something, rather than just the academic part of it, but something that will, reach their core? I think field trips, I know that they're difficult, but they really are, essential, I think, for real learning. You can show 1,000,000 pictures of a cow, but if you've never seen a cow, it's not going to make that much of an impact. My other discussion is on the strategic plan. And I've seen these charts many, many times, and they're all very abstract to me. They're all kind of gobbledygook. I'd like to see something substantive connected with each of these categories that I can actually see what it is you're talking about. And one of the things that I feel strongly about is the reactive classroom, of course. And the reactive classroom, I know, is going through on the elementary level. I just don't want to see it shrink. I think that, from the feedback I've been getting, is that it's getting smaller and more rushed in the morning. And I think it's an important part of the day where the students come in, and also a time of assessment where the teachers can assess the student. The last thing I wanted to mention, going back to the strategic plan, is I'd like to see Harriton and Lower Merion high schools act as a community rather than as adversaries, that we do more things together with the high schools as part of a community. We've talked about this before, that Harriton has land, and so there can be activity on their grounds. Lower Merion has a pool, so there can be activity on the pool. Just more togetherness. Just one quick thing. I know that one of my granddaughters is in the organic chemistry activity that takes place on Saturday over here. And that's a perfect example of this cooperation between the two schools.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Yeah, I think Dr. McGinley was going to answer.
Okay. Yes, we will serve lunch to the students. We're not in a position this year to send kids or send resources from school to school. It is a pilot project, and so if the need is proves to be greater consistently at one school over another, we'll have to look at that issue. But right now, we're not in a position to share resources. In terms of the active experiences, our kindergarten. The core program is an active learning model, and kids have a lot of interesting experiences. And the kids in kindergarten do get to go off-site and do things, and we value that greatly, as do our teachers. We don't see that happening in this extended day program. We see that much more tutorial-centered, teacher-directed set of activities over a short period of time, more an intense learning model, not one that's exploratory. We do see this as being more directed. You mentioned the reactive classroom. I was thinking overreactive classroom, but you meant responsive classroom. We value the model. The responsive classroom is an approach to the day. The morning meeting, we did shrink in size. This is the first time we did that. We are in the spring getting feedback from teachers about how they see how those changes have affected them. We consolidated that to a 15-minute morning meeting, unless the teacher's doing some academic tasks. And if they're doing math or language arts in that setting, they can extend it. But the responsive classroom part of that we see as the 15 minutes. But responsive classroom goes beyond the morning meeting, and we are taking a look at that. The last issue is an issue that concerns all of us. We like a healthy rivalry between the two schools, and if you come to athletic competitions between the two schools, one of the things you see at the end of the competition is the kids all talking to one another, because they know each other from all other leagues and clubs and camps and activities and houses of worship throughout the township. So they're not strangers to one another at all. Harriton, specifically does use the pool that's at Lower Merion. The swim teams are there. There aren't any formal activities at Lower Merion that take place over at Harriton, but there is some discussion, because Harriton has football lights on the football field, that may be a direction that we take in terms of LM doing some of their home games over on that side of town. There are, under cooperation between the student councils, cooperation around some charity events, and some innovation centered activities that Mr. Young sponsors, places where LM and Harriton kids come together very routinely over sets of projects. Not all of it is very visible to the public, but there are a lot of those opportunities, and we want to nurture those. We want to support them. One of the concerns that we have overall is, at night, where do people go, and where can they gather, and what other opportunities can we create that go across the two schools? So it is of interest as we share that concern.
Good evening, Rosa Sorota Winwood. During the last strategic plan process, I think the group was very specific about documentation and evaluation and assessment through the process of the plan. And I wonder if any of that was undertaken, and if there is any documentation to show us how things were going, and if the administration used that documentation and how it was used. I think it was a very specific, clear plan, and we worked very hard to put something on paper that could be followed, and that was helpful to teachers, parents and residents of the community. And I just wonder if there was an ongoing process and where we can see that process, how we can view it. Thank you.
On our website, there's a midpoint review, which is probably the last major public document where we took an assessment of the strategic plan. We have done numerous reports. The greatest indicator of our success overall is student performance outcomes, and we report on those things routinely. So there is documentation, and there are some things that are written in the plan that were easily measured. There are some things that are not. And I guess the last major current document, I'm looking at Dr. Marseille, is that mid-course review. But the timeline that Dr. Marseille distributed tonight has a period of time, this month in fact, where we're drawing conclusions and be able to report out. So there is this reporting out to say, well, you had this goal, how well did you do? And that is part of this process before we go out to these public meetings and these focus groups to really give an honest count on the progress that we made toward goals.
Can I follow up on that with one question?
That's up to
One question, please.
I guess I wonder for folks who cannot come to these meetings, and these meetings are incredibly informative, how those folks would have a record of what actually the information that you're going to give us. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the website's the best resource. Every PowerPoint presentation that takes place at this meeting gets posted to the website. So when we report out, that will occur. And there will be a specific section on the website about the strategic plan that will include data, that will include a report, and so that will be available. We want people to be able to take a look at it.
Ms. Blunt?
Hi, Crystal Blunt Ardmore. Just to piggyback on that answer real quickly, for those people that don't have access, could there be something in the school, like, or if you don't have access to the computer, could you come over to administration, look over it or read over it? Like, would that document be in paper form somewhere for someone that doesn't have access to computer? Yeah, okay. And actually, I had another question too about the kindergarten program.
Are you talking to the microphone?
Yeah, I am.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. In the kindergarten program, that's going to be housed in their own schools, right? No kindergartens are traveling. They're just going to take that extra help within their buildings, right? With the strategic plan, she sort of asked my question, or not really directly my question, but a piece of what I was wondering, because there were specific goals in that strategic plan for students of color, African American students. And I was just wondering if they were met, which ones were successful, and, with the district meeting them, and were those that aren't going to be identified and moved on again to the next plan. Because I know that, and I still realize there's still a gap, so I just was wondering, those specific goals were to address the achievement gap. So what worked or what was successful, and where do we go from there? They're not.
So, yes, we can do a paper copy of our report in the schools, and part of the process that's laid out by the state requires you to do the proposed goal and have that available in the schools. But we can have that available in school offices and notify people who've registered to get paper copies of things, and we won't send them the report, but we'll tell them that the report's available, so we can make sure that occurs.
Or, they could probably make announcement in the community churches too for those people who don't have
Right.
access.
Well, one of the things that Dr. Marseille said was we also, members of that leadership team are coming out to various places to have conversations about how well the district's doing, or what concerns people have. We're trying to take the conversation to a lot of places before we just get people who are motivated to join the team in the room to talk about the future of the district. The kindergarten program, yes, is occurring in everyone's individual schools, and so kids are staying there for the other part of the day, or arriving early if it occurs in the morning. We will report out data, and that's what's being worked on now. about how well we did in the achievement gap area. There were things in that area that were about college SAT scores, improving grades. There was a long list of things that we wanted to work to improve, and we will be able to report out on that. I see you're ready to push your button, so you want to add to that?
Yes, I want to add that every year we provide a report on the status of our students' progress, specifically to those targeted areas that we've identified in the plan. We, in addition to that, and care, we've shared those results. Early part of curriculum committee of the board meeting historically has been an opportunity for us to say, in September, October, here's our assessment information, and give an update on where we are as a district in terms of that current year. So we have been giving some updates around PSSA, and of course, more recently, Keystone results. We spoke specifically about the enrollment of African American students in honors and AP courses and areas of growth we've seen there. We identified areas of growth in our third grade classrooms and specific eligible content areas, and also identified areas that we didn't see the level of growth that that we wanted as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and
Just a reminder that on Friday, we have our afternoon of service in honor of Martin Luther King Day. We have, that will be hosted here at Lower Merion High School, 1 p.m. on Friday, and families are invited to attend as a family. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to be of service. There are a lot of projects that occur where you just show up and contribute to the project. And we have a lot of our middle school and high school students who are there to provide information and help to educate and inform. So I don't know if there's anything else we should add, Dr. Marseille or Mr. Young, about Friday?
It's similar to previous years. We expect attendance from a lot of, actually every school has some function at the
Right.
event.
So every school has a program they're supporting or a table they're supporting. And we also have volunteers from the care committee this year hosting a table to try to make sure that more parents are aware of the care committee and that there's an opportunity to become more involved.
okay, thank you, and with that, we're adjourned.